what are your thoughts on Cleveland? Because to me,
Damn.
because
writing them off like that. Mike, you see that?
31-4. They're not much of a threat. Yeah.
No, because I'll say this. So, and I'll give you, because I'm kind of like the historian of the show. I'll give myself that nickname. So to me, I feel like this Cleveland team is like the Cleveland, not the LeBron. I'm talking about the Cleveland teams that was in part of the Jordan era that had Brad Daugherty, Mark Price, Greg Elo, Rod Williams. Were really talented. They were number one seed in the East in the early '90s, and that man, that black cat came into the arena and got their ass up out of there. So I fully believe that if you put 0 on the floor in a game 6 or a game 7 in Cleveland, he'll get their ass up out of there too, because we've seen it. So I trust 0 to get the job done, especially on the road. We've seen it in Milwaukee. We've seen it in Philly. We've seen it in game 7 in Miami a couple years ago. So I trust 0 on the road. If it comes down to us against them in the game 6 or game 7 out there, I fully trust for him to get him up out of there. So that's why I said it. Once again, hell of a team. They're going to break records. Kenny Atkinson is probably in running for Coach of the Year. I think it should be JB Bickerstaff, ironically, because the fact that Detroit has 17 wins at this, I mean, come on, Drew. I'm like, Detroit having 17 wins is amazing at this stage of the season compared to last year. So I know they added some guys on their roster, but it's unbelievable what I've seen for them to be even touching 500. So, but I'll let you give thoughts to that. That was a mouthful. So, do you see us? How do you see Cleveland matching up against Boston if we got to that stage?
Yo, I'm with you, Ray. I'm not as dismissive of Cleveland. Like I'll take us against anybody. But I'm not just gonna dismiss them, man. Like 31-4 is nuts.
Right.
They are not giving up ground. They are not coming back to the pack. That team is rolling, and they can score that thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a Cleveland fan, and Scal's talked about this theory this year, what I would worry about is the size of their backcourt against our team, especially where we got the stock exchange with Drew and Derek White. We got our wings, and then we got size in the front court as well. They have size, down low, but do they have size out on the perimeter? That's the problem. But keep in mind, a lot of the wins Cleveland's rolled up already, they did without Max Strus. They've dealt with injuries. They're super deep. Dean Wade, our worst nightmare. Like he's the guy who committed Larry Bird against us in Cleveland last March. He's missed a lot of time. I'm not just writing them off. Which that's kind of how I felt at the start of the year when they won 15 games in a row. I'm like, all right, we'll stop that win streak, and then they'll kind of come back to us.
Right. We did.
Step 1, check. Step 2, not so much. Like they continue to rip off these wins. Yeah. And I think when a team is this good, they demand your attention. Same thing with Oklahoma City. If a team wins 30 before it loses 5, like you got to pay attention.
Well, so to me, I think OKC is better than Cleveland. Personally,
I agree with that.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So that's where. And once again, they're playing great team ball. And once again, Kenny Atkinson it wasn't to this level of success, but he turned around Brooklyn when he was there too. They was fighting for playoff success. So he's a hell of a coach. I'm not taking it away, but I'm just saying when the shit hits the fan, right? And the rubber meets the road, whatever analogy you want to use, I'm riding with 0. Period. I did there's no, and I can be the monster because I'm a fan. I'm not covering it. I'm not on TV. I can say that. So whether they're hearing it, it's cool. That's fine. They can come back to this big time show and hear me and hear my words. I'm cool. I'll stand on it. I'll stand on 10. I'm like you, Drew.
I just want to say, Drew, I'm so happy that you get to meet this Ray, like the Kool-Aid Ray, because Haterade Ray from 3 years ago was wild. He was talking about burning it down, just like I was. I got him to the dark side. But, I mean, I think that this team, they don't have as much to prove as they did last year or the years before. But one thing that I wanted to ask you before we wrapped up was, can you talk about Joe Mazzulla and just his progression? Because a couple of years ago, it looked like the game or the moment might have been too big for him. But now it feels like he has complete control and command of everything that's happening on the floor, and you're right there. So are you noticing a difference between last year and even this year, like in the huddles during timeouts, how he's talking with the players?
Well, you might have seen a little smile on my face when you brought up Joe Mazzulla, because that dude is, to me, one of the most interesting people in sports and one of my favorite characters I've ever had the chance to cover. He is like the most interesting man in the world to me. Let me just tell you a quick story that just happened. Scal, Abby, and I, plus someone from our PR staff with the Celtics, we went to Disney because we were in Orlando and we were staying pretty close to the park. And I got these Disney passes through ESPN. So I'm like, all right, F it, we'll go. And we're coming back to the hotel, and this dude stops us in the lobby. And he's like, hey, you know, Drew, Scal, and Abby, love watching you guys on the broadcast. Like, I live in Costa Rica, but I get the stream. I'm like, Costa Rica, dude? Like, who are you? Why are you a Celtics fan? You aren't. Turns out his name is Josh Waitzkin, and let me like the cliff notes of this dude's life. Incredible. He was a chess champion when he was like a teenager. There's a movie called Searching for Bobby Fischer, which is about him. He sort of got bored with chess, so he decided to pick up mixed martial arts and is like a jiu-jitsu champion now. Now he's living in Costa Rica doing this different type of surfing where the board doesn't actually touch the water. It has a fin that touches the water. So anyway, dude's fascinating. He wrote a book called The Art of Learning. Joe read it, wanted to be in touch with him, and now like they're boys. So that's the type of thing. Like, I think Joe Mazzulla is drawn to interesting people who look at the world in a different type of way, because that's what he is. Like he's a bit of a savant. And I think sometimes in press conferences, people will see his public persona and they're like, what's up with this dude? Like, what is his deal? Because he doesn't treat things like regular people do. He doesn't go through the motions. He's not trying to fit a role. He just is who he is. I think he's a great lesson in being yourself. Because like, you guys were probably saying it yourselves after the Celtics lost to the Heat in his first season as the coach. A lot of people didn't think he was ready for it and didn't think he was the guy for the job. They wanted to Gerard Mayo his ass and fire him after 1 year. And he didn't change who he was. He didn't change who he was one bit, and it paid off with an NBA championship. So to me, I love being around Joe because he is unique and he's not afraid to just be himself. And I do think he's getting more comfortable in the role. He said something to us the other night, which is, you know, the Celtics had a bit of a shaky December, lost 6 games in the month of December, which never happens with this iteration of the team. And he said, like, I understand the job in the media. Each game is its own story, right? So you got to react to each game individually, like we were talking about with the 3-point shooting. For the Celtics, for the coaches and the players, the season is the story. And each game is a different chapter, right? So you don't want to overreact to each segment. If there's a trend that becomes a big problem, like if we're shooting 83s and 15 twos in a game, then and we do that consistently, that's a problem. If we shoot 20% from deep for the entire season, that's a problem. If we do something defensively, like where we give up 50 layups in a game, and that happens for a couple weeks span, we're going to do something to address that. But I think the most valuable thing he provides to this team is his consistency and his belief in what they're doing is the right thing, and it's going to pay off in the end. And you saw the fruits of that labor last season.